Hello, and welcome back to Iron Butterfly Podcast. My name is Megan Jaffer.
And I'm Katie Hopkins, and we'll be your hosts.
We created Iron Butterfly Podcast in honor of Eloise Page, the original Iron Butterfly. And on this very special season, we are going inside our first documentary feature film titled The Power We Hold: Stories from Women Spies. This film features 10 of the most powerful women you've never heard of, and this season, we'll get up close and personal with each of them. We hope you find their stories as powerful as we do. All right, so Katie, why are we here today?
We are here today because we are going to talk about the making of our documentary, our first feature documentary by two first-time independent filmmakers called The Power We Hold: Stories from Women Spies.
Perfect intro.
Wow, now that I have left my body, let's get started.
I'm awake. I'm awake now. Okay, so for the listeners, we have decided to kind of share with you, look, you all know, but if you are new to our podcast, Katie and I came from the intelligence community, and at a certain point, we decided to make a documentary. And so we had no idea. We were completely new. We were not filmmakers. And so we thought we'd tell that story and what it
Our
was
adventures
like.
along the way.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. I just came up with some more in my head.
Good.
Whoa. Like a rush of stuff. So
a rush of adventures.
Would you like to start us off?
Yes, I think so. I want to start because technically this has been over a decade in the making, because really Iron Butterfly has its roots in a community organization called Amazing Women of the Intelligence Community, or AWIC. I'm sure many of our listeners know AWIC very well, love AWIC as much as we do, but do you want to talk a little bit about what happened on a very consequential night in 2015?
Sure. So, actually, two senior women in the intelligence community, Ellen McCarthy and Karen Diener, I think they were at a conference, and they were at a bar after one conference, and they were talking about mentorship. And they kind of came up with this idea of like a reverse mentoring that, they learn just as much from their mentees as mentees learn from them. And wouldn't it be great if they could kind of bring some young women and senior women, and when I say senior, I mean in rank, not in age, together.
We call them the sages.
The sages, that's correct. So that happened. They had talked to a few other women. One person was Carrie Drake, and she was more on she was part of the junior list. And then they spoke to Suzanne Heckenberg, who was running INSA, and they said, "Hey, can you help us put together 30 names. So it'll be 15 junior women and 15 senior women." And Ellen said, "I'll host it at my house and we'll see what happens." So we did. That night we sat around and this was pre-Me Too. So it really had nothing to do with men, and it had everything to do with just women creating their own community in this national security space. And we started talking, and the young women were telling their stories about the things they were experiencing. And then the senior women were like, "Holy shit, that's still happening? I thought that didn't happen anymore. We thought we broke that glass ceiling." And we came to this realization that this community was needed, and that we wanted a space where we could be promoting and mentoring and bringing each other along and fostering this sense of community of women in the national security space. So, long story short, at the end of the night, there was a keynote that night, and And after that, we all kind of were sitting around and they were like, okay, well, how do we organize this? Is there anyone who wants to take charge? And I promise you, I thought the entire room was going to raise their hand. And two people did. One was me, and one was a woman named Heather Crody. And she was a contractor, and I think she worked on communications or marketing. She's no longer in the IC, but I was shocked. And so they were like, done. You guys are going to take charge. So from there, we built this organization. We had a committee of 10 and we started hosting events, and we had monthly happy hours so that we could get together, and it flourished. And then,
And I think what's cool about this is that it was an entirely self-organized, self-funded
Yep.
community. Like, this wasn't something where you guys went to a bunch of defense contractors and said, hey, can you pay us to do this?
Nope.
Like, you were doing this because it was important, because you cared about it, and because you wanted to build a community.
People donated their time, their resources, their homes, their food, their liquor. And even their spaces, because when we started hosting larger events, organizations donated their space. So like INSA, USGIF, they all donated their space so that we could have events. So that's where I met you.
I was wondering when I'd come into the story.
So I met you a few years later, and Katie, ladies and gentlemen, shocker, was a very active member.
I think they're as shocked as hearing that you were the only one that raised your hand.
So Katie was a very active member, and we became fast friends, I think.
Can I tell the story about how I joined AWIC just really quickly? Because it involves some of our Iron Butterflies. So my first job in the intelligence community was working at a consulting firm where we worked with aerospace and defense and technology companies to help them do business better with the government, basically. And there were no women at this company who were over the age of 25. Okay. And I remember the first woman I ever saw in a professional setting was Tish Long. And she walked in the door, and I still remember, like, I was facilitating this meeting, and I was so nervous because it was all these senior advisors who came in the room who'd been like decades in government. And we did this whole session with them. And there was one point where she like stepped out of the room to go to the restroom or something. And I swear she was the only woman in the room. And the men were like, I would ask the next question. They'd be like, we should probably wait for Tish to get back. She would have a really good answer to that question. And they were like humming and hawing. She literally walks back in the room like, what did I miss? And I was like, literally nothing. The men could not answer any questions about you. So that was the first time I ever interacted with anyone from AWIC. And because I was 22 at the time and I had the gumption of a 22-year-old, I emailed her without even checking to see who she was. And I said, hey, it was really great meeting you today. I'd love to meet for coffee and just like learn a little bit more about you. Of course, I look her up after the fact, and I was like mortified. I was like, maybe I should have like spell checked that or something at least, because I paid no attention. And then she said, I'm going to be traveling for a while, but there's this AWIC happy hour coming up. I'd love to invite you. She invited me, and you were the first person that I met there.
Oh my God, I don't think I know that.
Yeah, you were radiant as usual.
Oh God. Well, thanks. So moving on, we became fast friends, and then about 5 years into AWIC, I had been like kind of leading the committee, and I was ready to kind of spread my wings elsewhere, and the committee itself was trying to kind of turn over and bring in fresh, like young women to lead. And so you were my first choice, my only choice, and then you took it over. And then COVID happened. COVID happened right at that time.
Yep.
And why don't you talk about a little bit about where you were at that point in your career and what your epiphany was?
Yeah. I don't know what my epiphany was, but we'll see if I can get to it. The reason we all are here. Yes, of course. Okay. So I was running AWIC, and I was working in the intelligence community at that time as an analyst at Defense Intelligence Agency. And there were a couple things that were happening in parallel. First, at AWIC, we had to figure out how to shift entirely from in-person events, which we had always done, to virtual, like the rest of the world. And then, and in the government, I mean, every agency was just completely scrambling, trying to figure out like how they were going to adjust to this new normal. I mean, like you can't work remotely when you're working in a secure environment, right? And so the agency kind of advised all of us. They said, okay, while we figure this out, like here's a long list of podcasts. So like go listen to these topical podcasts. And all of them were kind of about the same thing. Like they were about, there was a lot of like, I always use this example, but like, what did Putin eat for breakfast this morning? And
Mm-hmm.
like, what's he thinking about in terms of like invading Ukraine? And those were really useful from a content perspective. But at the same time, we started to do these virtual events with AWIC that were Ask Me Anything events, where we would have an interesting woman come on. And she wasn't just talking about her career, she was talking about who she was as a person, like what motivated her,
Mm-hmm.
why she decided to join this career path. And there was just there was just so much more of a pulse to those
Yeah.
conversations. Like they were just more real. They were more human. And they were really well attended. And we started getting questions from members like, "Hey, are you guys recording these? Like, I would really love to listen back." And that was when I had my epiphany, which was that there was a hole in the market. Like there was a gap. There was a need for these really incredible stories of real humans, not like, you know, news art like figments from news articles or like James Bond characters who were actually living this life and doing this work. And so that's when we decided to start.
Well, I'm going to pause right here because I would
Okay.
like to tell them the honest story of what happened next. So Katie comes to me, and again, I'm like free of time now. Like I felt,
Yeah, you were going to the spa
no, I
and
was
playing
not going to, I
tennis.
was not doing that, but I was starting like a new chapter of my life and career. And Katie comes and says, I have this really great idea. I think we should start a podcast. And she said everything she's just said, like, this is why, and it's, relevant to right now. And I think you should host it because I am in government and it would be a disaster. Like I'd have to get all these approvals and you should do it. And I looked at her and I said, absolutely not. And she was like, okay, well, we'll talk about that later. But I think, I
No,
think
I knew you were going to say yes.
so. My husband had started a podcast and someone had mentored him, his organization. He did it on behalf of an organization, and another organization had mentored him when he started. And I said to Katie, why don't you go talk to him? And it was the National Security Institute. And I said, why don't you go talk to them, have them get you started and see if you still want to do this. And so she did. And then she came back
Jamil was so nice, by the way. He was like, I think this is a great idea. Like, you can totally do it. We're going to help you with it. And we were like brainstorming names and stuff. I don't know if I've told you this.
no.
And he was like, you know what we should name it? We should name it She's a Spy?
Oh my God. What?
I know. So needless to say,
Worst
we didn't end up naming it
We
that.
did not.
But yeah, we ended up naming it Iron Butterfly because Iron Butterfly is, as many of our listeners know, the code name for the first female chief of station at CIA, Eloise Page. So this is all in her honor.
Yes. So then we start the podcast and we'll run through this kind of quickly. So we start the podcast with our friends and mentors, and I will speak for myself. I did not know it was going to kind of be as successful as it became after the first season. And we get a call after the first season in December. Well, I do. I get a call from a family friend in December after our first season of 10 women. And he says, Megan, I was just at this university doing something with, I think he had a speaking engagement or something. And I saw that they have Iron Butterfly as required listening on the syllabus. And I was like, hold on. And I call you right away on three-way. And I was like, Okay, repeat what you
Okay,
just
but
said.
like, but you have to say before that, before you merged the calls, you called me and you were like, "Oh my God, you won't even believe what I just heard." You were like sobbing, crying.
Oh, I don't remember that. I
You
thought
were.
I called you immediately with him
No, you were
on.
like sobbing, and then you're like, "Okay, okay, I'm gonna merge him in," and then you said, "Tell
Tell
me."
her,
Yeah.
tell her what we just said. So at that point, we realized we had something, and not that we didn't take it serious the first time. Like, we were doing it for fun. This wasn't a company. This wasn't a way to make money. This was just, we wanted to tell the stories of these women. So we started being more strategic, and we had planning sessions before each season. And we started getting recognized, and people recognized, meaning like people would recommend other guests to us, and like we were becoming more of a name in the
Mhm.
community. And then after about a year, was it about a
Dude, I
year?
think it was a couple of
A
years.
couple years.
Yeah.
So we do this for a couple years again.
Oh, a really important thing that happened in that time period is that Amanda joined our team.
Amanda, you can't see her, but she's always in the back. Woo! She's the one who's pushing the buttons.
Yes, among many other things.
Yes, and we could not do this without her. We could
Yes.
not be here without her. And I mean, if she left us, we would be like SOL.
Yeah. Correct.
That's all.
Correct.
I was gonna say it, and then I'm like, I'm gonna hold back.
Yeah.
So after a couple years, again, not a company, not we're not making money off of this. It was just something we wanted to do. We sat down, and I think it was a December, and I think we were kind of doing a hot wash.
Oh, yeah, we were. That's right. It was in December.
And we were saying, okay, so how can we level this up? And we had thrown around different ideas, like, should we do a book about the stories of these women? And because what we wanted to do was elevate it to a larger audience. We realized that, over the past couple years, that there were these themes that were there with all of the women, like through all the stories, that were bigger than just our community, the national security community. Like, any woman in any male-dominated community, whether it was like entertainment or healthcare or whatever, they could find something in these stories. And quite frankly, a lot of men listened too, because there was leadership, there was mentorship, all those things. So we were like, how can we get this to a bigger audience? And we were like, what about a book? And we were like, no, because only the people who are in our community will read it. We want to expand. And we came up with this idea, like, well, what if we do a documentary? And do you remember anything about that discussion?
I don't, other than just to say, I remember being like, that's a really big idea. Like, that's a really big idea. And I don't think I even at that point knew just how big of an idea
I'm going to
that
put an
was.
exclamation on that. Hell no, did we know what we were getting into. So what we did is what I think any person who has a big idea would do, which is we kind of did some due diligence, and we spoke to 3 people. We spoke to like a filmmaker that was a young filmmaker, like just kind of up and coming, to ask him what he thought, right? Like, technically, could we do this? And what do you think? And he said, absolutely, you could do it. We spoke to a documentarian and someone in the entertainment industry who was a war correspondent and a documentarian. And we asked her, what do you think? Is it crazy? And she said, it is crazy, but you can do it. And I'll help you. And I'm afraid the first person said, I'll help you too. So those 2 people said, you can do it, and we'll mentor you. And then we spoke to an author. She was a historical novelist, and we talked to her really about storytelling and how to story arc something like this. And we asked, do you think we could do it? And she said, yes. So at that point, we were like, okay. And I think it was at that point where we decided, well, the first step is we have to start a company.
It is. Yep. Yep. So we started Iron Butterfly Media.
Mm-hmm.
We incorporated our company in December of 2022, and we have a picture of it. We'll send it to Amanda so she can put it in
Mm-hmm.
the video. Um, and then we realized that the industry standard was not just to incorporate a company, but to incorporate a subsidiary of that company for the individual
Yeah.
project that we were doing. That's for liability reasons. That's for financial reasons, like all kinds of stuff, insurance. And so we created a subsidiary, which ended up being a partnership between Iron Butterfly Media and Megan and myself, and our technical director, Jacob Centeno, who is the CEO of Poor Bear Stories. So we combined our names and we called it Poor Butterfly Stories Film One LLC.
Can I just put a little asterisk here?
Yes.
Because this is important, okay?
It is.
This is very important. So we wouldn't have known to do the industry standard was to set up a subsidiary and have the proper agreements, not only between you and I,
Mm-hmm.
but agreements between us and Jacob,
Mm-hmm.
without our fantastic lawyer, Mark Balin of Balin Law.
Shout out to Mark Balin. We could talk about Mark for like 20 minutes. I mean,
I know we're going to get to this, but I'm just going to put it up front because there's no reason why we should wait. Because I'm sure you're going to say, what are our lessons learned? But I'm going to just put some of that up front.
great.
It is imperative if you are thinking about starting a company. The two things that you should have, and you can find people that can do it for low cost, because we had zero money. We had zero. And we had Mark help us as our lawyer. And the thing that we learned was we should have had an accountant at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
We waited too long to find an accountant, which, if that is a piece of advice to take away for
Mhm.
anyone who wants to start a company, is find someone who can do it for what you can afford, but you really need to have those people up front because it'll save you so much time, money,
Yeah.
and effort later on. So
100%.
gotta, Mark, you're a lifesaver.
Yeah, we love you, Mark.
Yeah.
Yes. So we created our parent company and our subsidiary.
Mm-hmm.
And then, to your point about having no money, we started fundraising. And so we did our first fundraiser. Where was that? That was at...
So the first fundraiser, oh my God.
What's the name of the place?
The place is, it'll come to me in a little bit, but
Okay.
I'll tell you where it is so that
Uh-huh.
everyone can
Check
go
it
there,
out.
check it out if you're in the DC area. So it's this little inn that's like a restaurant inn, and it's in between Old Town Alexandria and Mount Vernon. And it used to be a part of the Mount Vernon. For those of you that don't know what Mount Vernon is, that is the home of George Washington, our founding president. And so
If you don't know who George Washington is, we can't help you.
We can't help you. And so that restaurant used to be a part of the land, like the part of George Washington's land. It no longer is, but it is a beautiful restaurant. And so we rented a little room in that restaurant, and we invited kind of just women from AWIC, really, but really women who've supported us. But wait, we have to scooch back a second, because even before that, we had asked the women.
Oh, yeah, we did. That's right.
So let's just put a pin in that.
Yeah.
I can't believe that we jumped ahead. Sorry, everyone. So what happened first was, we asked everyone, we started the company, and then we put together,
Oh,
you know what?
yeah.
I will show it because I know we have pictures of it too. This presentation, a PowerPoint presentation printed out.
It wasn't even a PowerPoint. It was
kinda
like
sad. A mishmash.
Yeah.
It was a pitch to
Yeah.
the women that we wanted in the movie. And at the time we had 9. We had wanted 9. And we took each of them out for a breakfast, lunch, or dinner. and pitched this idea. And we said, do you want to do it?
Mhm.
And they all said yes. Some of them were more flavorful responses. One was Carmen, shocker.
Who said, "Are
She
you
was,
sure?"
no, she was like, oh, that's an interesting idea.
Yeah.
And then, so I don't know what came first, if it was the fundraiser. I think it was. I think
Mhm.
we had the fundraiser. We had invited we invited the women that we had asked that all
Mhm.
said yes, some of our like biggest supporters,
Mhm.
to get the seed money
Mhm.
to start filming.
Yep,
Right.
exactly.
And we had Jake come out and do a little like
Mhm.
interviews with each women on why this was
Yeah.
important. And it was like a beautiful background. Everyone felt kind of fun, warm and fuzzy inside.
Mhm.
And, and then we had the money to start
Mhm.
to do our first studio shoot.
Yeah. I think just before we get to that, because that's like kind of fun
Yeah.
to finish the fundraising conversation. So this has been a 3-year fundraising effort.
Yes.
Truly a 3-year fundraising effort. This was not like we did this once and then we never had to do it again.
Yeah.
I think that's particularly true for any independent filmmaker or just independent creative in
Mhm.
general. And so what we did is we started trying to fundraise from individuals. We crowdfunded the entire cost of this documentary. We actually did this math the other day. We raised over $200,000 from exclusively private individual donations. 70% of those donations were made by women, which I think is just an amazing statistic.
It is.
And what we started to learn when we started to fundraise is that people said, hey, you guys, really need a 501c3.
Mm-hmm.
You really need a nonprofit so that people can contribute to this, because it is educational in nature, can contribute to this and write it off on their taxes. And so then we incorporated our third entity, which was Iron Butterfly Foundation, which we then had to register with the IRS as a 501c3 tax exempt organization, an educational organization. Thank you, Mark, once again.
Find
And
our chairwoman,
yep,
our advisory
yep,
board.
that's right. Draft our conflict of interest policy, like everything, all of the above. So that was a long process, but that was actually really instrumental in us raising that amount of money for this film.
It's instrumental to the programming that we're going to do going forward.
Yeah,
so
definitely.
we have these two entities that are going to be doing two different things. That is really kind of cool.
Mm-hmm.
But we'll come back more to that later. And really today's focused on how to make a movie. So,
Yeah.
So we find this really cool studio in DC.
Mm-hmm.
It's like it's almost like in
It
the
was
alley.
like, yeah, and it was like a box.
It was like a carriage house.
Yeah,
It was a
yeah,
carriage house in the
yeah.
alley in DC. And they used it. I mean, it's a full studio. Like you can, news organizations would use it for interviews and things like that. We booked it for a whole weekend. And we scheduled back-to-back interviews with the 9. It was still 9 at that time, women. So we get all that set up. We book Jake and his team to come out, and you, me, and Amanda started storyboarding.
Mm-hmm.
And we have those big Post-it, presentation.
Yeah.
What do you even call those? Like whiteboard, Post-it note things. I mean, page after page of what do we want this story to be? And then, revision. And then it was like, okay, now how are we going to start this? How are we going to get the women comfortable first?
Yeah.
Because they're all going to be
we
in front of a camera.
storyboarded each person. We spent like probably at least an hour on each person of like where we were going to start with them. What we were trying to build
in the beginning,
towards.
at least an hour. I mean, I think it was ultimately way more than an hour, but yes, in the beginning, for sure.
Yeah. Oh no. Well, yeah. I meant just for that first.
Yeah.
Just for that very first shoot.
And we were like, okay, we need to. And again, no one's telling us what to do. We're like, we're gonna figure it out. And we were like, okay.
We reviewed their podcast transcripts. I remember that.
Yep. And we were just thinking like, okay. So what do we want to get out of this first sit down interview?
Mhm.
And how are we going to get there? And we had been coached, you can't just jump in with people that are just all of a sudden put in front of a camera and lights are on them. And then we're like, let's go, and expect them to feel comfortable. You have to kind of ease into it, ask them some kind of softball,
Mhm.
warming questions. We learned, we had been mentored. Uh, I am I am a caring person, Katie, if you didn't know. And we were told you can't,
Uh,
I remember this very specifically because it was so hard for me to do. We were going to ask some of these women some hard questions about things that probably would make them sad or angry or upset. And if they had those emotions, we couldn't react. Like we couldn't get up and give them a hug. And we knew these women, right? We
mhm.
couldn't get up and give them a hug. We couldn't hand them a tissue.
You can't even speak.
You can't even speak. You have to let them go through their emotions, which was extremely hard
Mhm.
to do.
Mhm.
Um, and so I'll just go through my feeling, and
Yeah.
then I want you to go through your
Yeah.
feeling.
Yeah.
So we do all of this, right? We have 2 days of like 12-hour days going back to
Mhm.
back having these interviews with these women, and everyone had a range of comfortability cuz
Yeah.
some of them had been in front of cameras before and some had not.
And I don't think people realize it is like a big, like when you have like two massive lights
Lights,
straight on
yeah.
you. You have like four crew that you've never met before. You have the interview, the director's chair. There's like another couch where other people are sitting in. Like it is
There's a
a
hair and makeup
yeah,
people.
yes,
So there's a
yes.
whole room of people just
Yeah.
focused on you. And you're like, okay, now I'm going to ask you the toughest questions that you've ever heard. And then people are like, "Ugh." And yeah, it's very intimidating. Even
Mhm.
we were behind the camera asking the questions and it was intimidating.
Mhm.
Um, and so what I remember, first of all, it was the, the most I don't even know the right adjective. It was the best experience. It was just the most wonderful, best experience. The first time filmmaker experience that we could have had. And let me tell you, it wasn't all roses and sunshine. Like we were, people got, a little testy,
Mhm.
not with the guests, but like with the crew, we got testy with each other, but we all came around,
Well, everyone was passionate about the story. That was what we were debating,
yes.
was like what and at that point you have an idea of what the film is about, but you don't really know.
No.
Like that's what I remember most
Yeah.
from this whole process is that we had people advise us on this kind of over time, but really firmly believe this now. You have to storyboard. Like that is part of the creative process
Yeah.
100%. But when you're actually sitting down with a person, interviewing them, you might end up, if you end up 50 to 75% correct, you did an incredible job. Like you really knew that person, you really storyboarded it well, but like there is a 50% chance at least that they're going to veer off course. And as an interviewer, this was like the biggest learning for me. You really have to like figure out how much to give, but also how to steer. And I think like I've been actually reflecting on this a lot recently. Like there is a power dynamic with an interviewer and someone being interviewed where the interviewer actually is driving a lot of the conversation and is driving the content. But I think like you can't just exert that power over the person you're interviewing,
Hmm.
right? Like you can't force them in a certain direction. In a way, a story is writing itself. Like
Hmm.
it is a living thing. Like it is its own organism and you kind of have to give it enough rope to like let it develop on its own. And like you're almost sharing power with that person in that moment. Like you have to let them meet you and then let the story meet
Hmm.
you and kind of roll with it. And it's just like it's a part of the creative process that I certainly didn't really expect going into that shoot.
So I would say that I viewed it a little bit different in the beginning. I would say that I think we in we let them share what they were going to share. Yes, we had our questions, right?
Mhm.
We had the things that we storyboarded and
Mhm.
where we thought we wanted to go. But I think in the beginning we were I mean, you'll see in the movie
Mhm.
at one point, I say, where do you want to start
Mhm.
to, or where do you want to start? And she's like, I don't know where you want me to start. And I
Mhm.
say, wherever you want, you
Right.
just go. Right. I
Yeah.
wasn't going to dictate to her.
No, I agree, but I think the question, like you were driving the conversation in that moment because you said you've been around for some historic
Yeah.
moments. Tell us what those were. It
Yeah.
was a question that you were driving. Like you put the stake in the
Yeah.
ground,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
then
Yeah.
she said, "What are you trying to get at?" And you said,
I don't
"The
know
floor is
wherever.
yours."
Right. I guess my point is in the beginning, it was more broad. We could
Mhm.
let them, it
Yeah,
was
yeah,
like
that's right.
here.
That's
And
right.
then once the story started forming
Mhm.
in later, filming sessions, then it was more pointed,
Yeah.
right? Like we knew we wanted to get somewhere. But
Mhm.
in the beginning, I felt like it was a little bit more open. We were
Mhm.
like, okay, let's see what we can get.
Yeah.
Then and then every filming session after that, it was more pointed, more pointed,
Mhm.
more pointed. That's
Yeah.
just
Yeah,
what I
yeah, for
thought.
sure.
Um, I would say one of the most memorable parts of that experience was at the end.
Mhm.
And we had finished the last day. And I mean, it is extremely, I have the utmost respect now for people who do this, because it is when you're sitting across from someone and they're sharing, you have to be completely
You
engaged.
do,
You
100%.
can't be, you can sit in I mean, I have been in many meeting rooms. I've had a career outside of this where you can glaze over. You don't have to listen to everything.
Mhm.
You can just occasionally tune in and be like, okay, they're talking about this, and then take a little note and then zone back out.
Mhm.
When you're doing this, you have to be 100% engaged. You have to hear everything that they say because you have to be able to respond
Mhm.
and think about what's next and what you
Mhm.
want. And you are, depending on how empathetic you are as a person, or like
Mhm.
if you know, you're feeling what they're feeling.
Mhm.
And all of that was rushing, and you're learning something new, and all of the things are happening,
Yeah.
and then I remember everyone had left, including all the team, and we had to close up the studio, turn off the lights.
Mhm.
Like it's exactly how you look at it. Like
Mhm.
we took one last look at the studio and we were like, wow, we just did this, right? And we turned off the lights, and the car was right outside the door.
Mhm.
We get in the car, you were sitting in the passenger seat, and I looked at you and I said, I just need a moment. And and I almost cried right there. And I just bawled. I just sobbed. And I thought I just needed to release.
Mhm.
Like there was so much emotion. It was like, I can't believe we just did that. I can't believe we just experienced that. We experienced so much emotion receiving it and giving it.
Mhm.
And we tackled that first milestone.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
tell me about what your experience was.
No, I think it was very similar, and I think, after that, what I remember is really trying to figure out from a story perspective, like, where we were gonna go next,
Yeah.
because obviously there are certain people who had moments in those interviews that we were doing that were really impactful, but some of them didn't connect to the other moments that other people were
Yeah.
having because this isn't a movie about one person,
Yeah.
right? This is a movie about 10 women. And so I remember like sitting down with all of that content and just being like, man,
How are we
how
weaving
the
this?
hell are we about to? Because at that point we had done so we had at least 10 to 12 hours of footage at
Yeah, I
that
was gonna
point.
say about 15
And
hours to
we knew our movie could be 70 minutes. And we
Yeah.
knew that there was like a bunch of other filming that we were going to do. And I think I had the realization then of like, oh wow, this is going to be like very intense. But I think what was also really cool about that shoot that I remember is it was our first time working with Jacob.
Mhm.
He brought members of his team that we had never met before, Taylor
Oh,
and
yeah.
Joelle. It was Joelle's actually first time on the job. Like he had
Yeah.
never worked with Jacob before.
Nope. Yep.
He was our behind the scenes guy. And Eric, who we had never met
Who's
before,
our
he was our
sound. Yep.
sound guy. And I just remember how like professional they were and like how excited they were to be there. And we would ask them after every single person would shoot, we would say, you know, we've been in part of this community for a long time, but like Eric, Taylor, Joelle, like, what do you guys think? Like,
Yeah.
what stuck out to you? And it was so cool watching them talk about the women's stories from their own perspective. Like, oh my God, when you said this, that was like a really badass thing. And I remember one moment specifically that we always joke about, which is our sound guy, Eric. We had just interviewed Dawn Myricks,
I
who
remember
was the
that.
director of science and technology at CIA. So she was talking about really sexy stuff, right? Like she's like talking about all this cool techie stuff. She was like, basically, she had told them that she was the equivalent of Q from the James Bond franchise in the United States. Their minds are like blown, right? And we were talking at some point about the deep state. And so we're talking about the deep state and like what this ambiguous term means that all these people use to describe the government. And I remember Eric just goes, man, if you're the deep state, then I love the deep state. Sign me up. And we loved it so much that we put it on a sweatshirt.
We put it on a sweatshirt. Can we still get that on our website? Yeah, you can still get that.
Oh, well, visit our
on our
online
merch store. Yeah.
So that's what I remember.
So after that, we knew that we did have a missing piece, and we had interviewed a case officer for the podcast, and her name was Laura Thomas. And she, at this point, had been out for a year, I think, right?
That sounds right.
Yeah, I think she had been out. We had interviewed on the podcast like a couple months after she had left CIA. And a year later, you know, after our first shoot, we knew there was a missing piece, and we knew we needed a case officer's perspective in the doc. And I remember
I think she reached out to us though. Like when she saw that we were
I think that's
fundraising or like
right.
we were posting about it, and she said, hey, I'd love to talk about how I can support you. And then we ended up asking
Well,
her.
so I like to paint the picture because so we were like, okay, let's have breakfast. And we went to this, there's a boutique hotel in Georgetown, and there is a diner that's attached to that hotel. And so we met her for breakfast in a diner. What do you call the
booth?
The
It was a booth.
Yeah, the diner booth.
We were in the back corner.
And we were sitting, for people who can see us, we were sitting on one side and our backs were to the door, and she was sitting on the other side. And we talked about it. And then we kind of just asked her there. We pitched it to her. We were like, what, you know, she asked us like about it. And then we were like, well, would you be a part of it if we asked you?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think she was like, whoa, wasn't expecting that. But she said yes.
She said yes. And so this is a little bit of insider information. So you're going to see in the movie, you know, the studio shots, and you'll see everyone in the movie except Laura in the studio.
And one more, Carmen.
Oh, we don't see Carmen. But
which is a nice segue to our next shoot.
Okay. Well, so just so you know, you didn't see Laura specifically because she came in.
She wasn't in the movie.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then we decided that we wanted to get up close and personal.
Yep.
With a few of them. And so we decided to travel to Texas.
Yep.
To visit two of the documentary participants, Sue Gordon and Carmen Medina, who both happened to live in Texas. Sue at the time lived in Houston.
Yep.
On the lake, and Carmen lived in
San
Antonio, at her mom's house.
Yeah.
So we hopped on a plane.
Her mom's house that she had inherited.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. We hopped on a plane. We went to see Sue first. And we were with her and her husband, Jim, and her son, Jay, his wife, Bethany, and their kids.
But before we even start, can I just say, I also want to paint the picture here. So we pull up to Sue's house, as a team, there's 4 of us,
Mhm.
right? So it was a very small team. It
Mhm.
was just me and Katie, Jake, and Taylor. We pull up to Sue's house. We had never seen a picture. We had never been there. And all I can say is I think we all said in the car, this looks like a safe house.
It does.
This looks like a safe house. And it's
It
gorgeous. It
is.
is a gorgeous house on the lake. We will not share which lake or anything of
Any
that sort.
information on the location?
But we oh my gosh. I just remember we said that we were all like, oh my God, this
Where
is
are
going to be
we? I
so
know.
amazing.
I
So
know.
go ahead.
But
Sorry.
no, I mean, it was amazing. Like, we made meals together and we
Yeah.
sat on the couch and we talked about the meaning of life.
We woke up
And
early and had like early at sunrise
yep,
and had
watched
coffees
this.
together
Yeah,
and
watched the
talked.
sunrise over the lake, and
Yeah.
we played a game of poker,
Oh my God.
which was hilarious
Oh my
because
God.
we had this whole conversation with Sue about like decision making and risk, and we were like, oh, wouldn't it be so awesome if we
Played a
staged a
game.
poker
Yeah.
match, and like we asked Sue about risk as she's like playing poker or whatever.
Nope.
And her husband Jim was just so hilarious. He was laughing at our questions. Like, I remember she had some poker chips that had like the Russian embassy
Yeah.
on them, and I said, for the purpose of the camera, oh, where did you get these poker chips? And he goes, at the Russian embassy, you dumb dumb. I was like, okay, well, this is not going to go according to plan,
Yeah,
but
yeah.
that is such an incredible memory
No,
of mine.
that mine was sitting at the dinner table. And I am not going to share the story, but there were stories shared. And at one point, Jim, off the cuff, made this comment about a story we were talking about. And I literally fell off my chair. It was a bench. And I fell off the bench laughing. I think I probably peed. It was the most memorable.
It was.
It was the most memorable
It
time.
was. Yeah, it really was.
And then
we
drove
to Carmen's.
No, but we stopped in San Antonio
Oh,
and spent
yeah.
a day, not even
Oh,
a day,
that's such
half a
good
day.
memory.
And they had a fair where it was like a music fair going on, and you had stopped because your husband was in training,
Mhm.
and he can we say what he
Yeah.
Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, so he was in Air Force pilot training.
Mhm.
And there's the longest portion of their training, he was in Del Rio, Texas, which is far from San Antonio, but it's closer than DC is to
Yeah.
Del Rio. And so he drove and came to meet us
Met
there.
us.
And you guys were like drinking micheladas. And
Yeah,
like,
mine was virgin. I mean, it was. I'm not lying. They put Topo Chico in instead of liquor.
Yeah.
And it was just for a couple hours, and
Yeah.
we listened to music and had
Mhm.
some like street
Yeah.
food, like from vendors, and it was so awesome. And then we drove off to
Mhm.
Carmen's.
And she took us to this restaurant that I'm not going to remember what the name of this thing is, but it's like a Texas delicacy. You put like beans in a Fritos bag.
Yeah, it's bag tacos.
Yeah, bag tacos.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we went to this place and we had bag tacos.
Then you know what? I'm going to be honest. So then we filmed at her house. So we did a
Mhm.
little bit inside her house, a little bit on her porch, and a little bit out. She had like all this land and she had brush. And she's like, we asked them before we went. We
Yeah.
were like, let's do one activity of something that you do like
Right.
normally. And she was like, well, I cut the brush so that it doesn't overgrow. So we all look like serial killers with these big shears out there, like cutting brush. It was hilarious. But this was a pivotal point for us because again, we didn't know Poor Bear stories that well. Like we
Mhm.
were starting to work together, and there was a point here where we had creative differences.
Mm.
And we really had to have like a sit down with each
Mhm.
other and be like, okay, let's talk this out. But I think those were the moments that made us stronger in
Mhm.
this project together.
Yeah,
And
totally.
even when it's hard at the time, it is important because nothing is goes perfect,
Mm-mm.
right? And in any relationship, whether it's a work relationship or a personal relationship or a family relationship, you're going to have ebbs
Mhm.
and flows. And I don't want to pretend to the people out there that this was smooth sailing the entire time, right?
Yeah, well,
Like
any creative process isn't.
yes,
I mean,
we have people. I think what the beauty about our teams is that we can have our differences, we can talk them out, we can get over them and move forward,
mhm,
which is amazing.
definitely.
Okay.
The other big thing that happened while we were there
Yeah.
is, well, first of all, we had just a ton of dance parties, which were incredible.
No, but you have to like
Uh,
Carmen literally after we were done, okay, done filming,
yeah,
she goes, "Okay, I'm going to play some music
yeah,
and I'm going to play some of my favorite songs." And so she puts them on,
all very danceable.
all danceable, and we literally just dance
No, yeah,
around her living room.
yeah. I literally had salt and pepper shakers in my hands,
We
like
had like
like doing
maracas.
maracas.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
then she had us all pick some of our favorite songs.
hmm
And
Megan sang Korean karaoke.
I sang Korean. Yeah, it was Korean folk songs that I
Uh-huh.
sang. And we just, we did it for like 2 hours.
Yeah, it was the best. It was the
But
best.
then we left. This
Uh-huh.
is the fun part. And we were not done dancing.
We were
And so we decided to start playing more music in the car on the way to the hotel. And we ended up parking in the parking lot, turning up the music and dancing on the car.
Do you remember what we were dancing to?
I'm sure you'll tell everyone.
Ludicrous.
Yes.
Moneymaker.
Yes, that was my pick.
Okay, and then so we finished that Texas trip. Then we come back to DC and we do our first shoot with Laura
Yes.
in DC, which
That was
was
such a cool shoot.
tons of fun. Thank you for listening to a special episode of Iron Butterfly Podcast, which ventures inside the world of our documentary, The Power We Hold: Stories from Women Spies. We might be coming to a film festival near you. To follow along on our journey, follow us on YouTube or Instagram, or visit our website at www.ironbutterflymedia.com. And if you like the show, please be sure to rate, review, and subscribe. Stay fierce, and we'll talk next time.